I've got this Honda Express NC50 moped as a barn find. Except I don't think it was even in a barn, because everything on it was seized up apart from the steering column. So I don't think it might not have been even in a barn. It might have been lying kind of outside for perhaps 15 years, because according to the tax disc, the last time it was legally used on the road was about 15 years ago. So it should make a nice interesting restoration project, because we had to carry it into my onto my land because the wheels wouldn't go round. So what I've done so far is just freed the front wheel off, because the brake shoes were seized to the brake drum. So at least that works now, and the speedo drive was seized up as well, so I managed to get that moving. But I think we've hit the first kind of more serious problem, in as much as some of the bits are missing out of the front forks. The suspension forks, that's one fork, and that's the other one, and that's spacer spring, and spring is missing on that one. And also there's the bottom, well, the top spring that actually does the suspension, soaks up the bumps, is missing in that fork. But I'm not totally sure at this stage whether they are actual coil springs or rubber. So I'll have to do a bit of research into that. So it's either a case of either getting more bits, kind of making more bits, or having just a rigid fork. I'm not sure whether that's legal. So anyway, we'll press on a bit more with kind of freeing things off. Right, so this is probably the first start attempt in 15 years. So what I'll do, I think I've got the spring wound up ready and the ignition's on. I think what I'll do is just squirt a bit of petrol into the carburettor, and then just see if it will do anything at all. So we'll just try that. So we've tried got a bit of petrol in my mouth. I've tried that and nothing's happened, so I think the spark is actually a bit weak. Because it only seems to spark when the engine's kind of rotating going at the maximum speed when it's on the starting spring. So I think I'll check that out. Well, it doesn't look like it, but I've actually made quite good progress with this little bike. I've freed most things off now, like brake cables and the adjusting nuts on the ends of the cables and things. It's been quite a job. So they're quite well rusted and seized, but I think we're gradually getting there. And the rear brake I've managed to get working. One of the brake linings had come off, so I stuck it back on with 2-part glue, and also there's plenty of lining on there, but one of the shoes is actually cracked, the metal of it. But I don't want to spend much money on this bike until I know it's going to be feasible to use. So anyway, that should work in the short term. I must say I really like the transmission of this little bike, because on most motorbikes it's just a dry chain which goes to the back wheel, but on this it's actually gears in oil, which seems to be much better than a dry chain. I think I'll get the wheels back on and this will stand upright then. I can move it around now. They're freed off because the front wheels seem solid as well. The brake shoes are stuck to the drum. And I've actually ordered another spring and rubber cushion pad for the front fork to replace the one that was missing. So hopefully that'll come in fairly soon. And these rest things spring back, and so I think what I'll do is get it all back together and kind of running, well, all moving mechanically, and then I'll go through the electrics and try and get all the electrics working. Well, I've started investigating the ignition to see if there's a problem with the ignition preventing it starting. And I thought what I'd do first is check the resistance of the plug lead back to the coil. So we'll just do that. This is the plug cap to earth. I'll just have a screw in the plug cap just to get a connection. I'm going to put off a bit of the earth on the coil itself, and that's about 13k, which is reasonable. If you wiggle it around, it doesn't change. On the body of the bike, it's still about 13k. So that seems reasonable. It's got a really good plug lead actually. It's quite thick insulation, which is good. Because what I've noticed is the first time you try and start it, there's a weak spark, and then the second time you try and start it, it's a weaker spark, and the third time the spark kind of disappears. It gradually kind of weakens as you're trying to start it, so there's something breaking down somewhere. I suspect it's either the coil or the generator in the bike's on the end of the crankshaft. The generator and points. So I've got another idea to check the output of the generator through the points. So I'll just get that rigged up next. So to check the output of the generator on the crankshaft through the points, this is the points are obviously still connected in the circuit. I've got my oscilloscope rigged up because it's a highly kind of pulsating voltage that the voltmeter wouldn't really show very well. So an oscilloscope is really a kind of high-speed voltmeter. So what I'm going to do is it's the black-white wire that comes up to the coil from that brings the power up from the generator through the points. So what I'm going to do is turn the crankshaft with a battery drill and see what kind of trace we get on the oscilloscope. I think that's peaking at about 30 volts. I haven't really got any idea what the voltage is supposed to be, but I think that should be reasonable to drive the coil. And actually, the other thing was when I disconnected the points and just span the flywheel to see I was actually checking something else at the time, but the wire that I connected from the points must have been just touching the flywheel, and there was some quite hefty sparking going on. So I think that kind of proves that it's given out quite a decent amount of power from the generator. So we've proved now that it's 30 volts open circuit anyway. So I think the next thing is to connect it to the coil and see if there's any change or kind of reduction in the voltage over a few seconds, which the spark plug seems to show. So I'll do that next. Right, I've got the spark plug out after that first attempt, and it's actually got petrol. It's soaked in petrol, so the petrol must be going from the air intake into the cylinder. So I think we're operating kind of independently of the carburetor at the moment. It's just to kind of try and get the first few kicks of life into it. So, but because the spark, I don't think it's very strong, I think the first thing I'll do is try a different spark plug. I've got a few spark plugs here, so I'll just try a few of those and see if we can get a slightly stronger spark. Right, so this is the spark plug saga. I've got a few different spark plugs here. This is the original spark plug out of the moped, which gives a very weak spark. And I've tried others, which I had in the shed. That one gives a strong spark, but the problem is it's got a longer thread, and I've tried that in the engine, and the piston hits it. So, and I tried it kind of unscrewed slightly so the piston wouldn't hit it, but it still wouldn't fire. And that one I tried gives no spark at all. So what I did was I invested in a new spark plug. But guess what? That one doesn't spark at all either. And I've actually measured the resistance, and that one's a higher resistance than the original one. Although the bloke in the motorbike shop assures me that that's the right one for the machine. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know whether you've seen my video how to start an engine with failed magneto coils. It was actually an Evan Rude outboard motor that I started, even though the magneto coils had failed. So you need to watch that video really to see what I'm going to try next. Yeah, I think I've got it spark now. It wasn't touching the body of the plug, wasn't touching the cylinder head. So if I'll show you the spark plug. Yeah, you can just about see it fire when it's on kind of maximum cranking res. Right, so. But the other thing I noticed with this bike is the transmission's got no neutral, so when you rev the engine, the back wheel spins. So when you don't want to, before you get on it, I suppose you tend to rev the engine a bit to get it running nicely. So the back wheel spins, but the stand on this particular bike doesn't really lift the back wheel off the ground very much. It's kind of weighted slightly towards the front, so the back wheel isn't on the ground when it's on the stand. So I think what I'll do is I'll weld some spacers on the bottom of the stand just to give it a bit of space under the back wheel when it's on the stand. Then you can rev the back wheel even when it's on soft ground. I might put bigger feet on as well to stop it kind of sinking into the ground. So I think I'll do that, a little bit of welding of those spacers next.